That red, raw earth didn't just hold the lace of her buried dress. It held the rotten, deep-down roots of a century-old secret, and Cora dug right into the heart of it. When she finally cracked the lock on Ben's mysterious box, she found not a love letter, but the explosive key to a forgotten, powerful family legacy and the name of the cold-blooded man who vanished him. She stopped being the heartbroken bride and stood up as a warrior, using that ancient truth to face the darkest, grimmest shadow in the whole county. Silas Finch himself. The entire town held its breath, betting on whether her audacity would shatter her or finally deliver the justice that land had been waiting on. The true test, though, was whether she could pay the price for all that truth and still find the strength to forgive the runaway groom when he finally walked back through the door. Cora Mae lived in a house nestled right on the bend of Harmony Creek, a place where the air hung heavy with the scent of damp earth and unspilled secrets. Her wedding was set for a Saturday, 7 days hence, and the entire front parlor was already overflowing with gifts, silver bowls that winked in the low afternoon light, stacks of crisp linen, and the suffocating scent of lilies. She wore the hope of a good life like a second skin, a hope stitched together with the promises of her fiancé, Ben. Ben was solid, quiet, and he had hands that knew how to work wood and how to hold a woman gently. And in Harmony Creek, that was as good as gold. The dress, her dress, the one she had sewn every pearl onto herself, hung in the spare room, white as bone, cold as river stone, awaiting its day. Cora had checked it 3 times that morning, touching the delicate lace on the sleeves, a physical manifestation of a dream she'd carried since she was a girl. But on this Tuesday, the phone didn't ring when it should have, and the truck, usually parked neatly by the oak tree after his job finished, was absent. A small, cold knot began to form right under her ribs, a fear that felt like the first chill of winter, unexpected and sharp, and it kept pulling at her, a low hum beneath the surface of all her perfect preparations. She told herself he was running late, that the mill had kept him, that the engine had failed, offering up excuses like tiny prayers, trying to fill the expanding silence where his voice ought to be. But deep down, where the water runs dark and true, she knew. A week's worth of waiting, and the silence stretched out like an old piece of lace, fragile and easily torn by the slightest sound. Tuesday bled into Wednesday, and Wednesday into the heavy, judgmental heat of Thursday. Sheriff Tate, a man whose patience was as thin as his gray hair, drove out to the house twice. He shuffled his boots on the porch, asked the same questions in a low, gravelly voice, and looked at Cora with an expression that wasn't pity, but a kind of weary, local knowledge. "Folks don't just vanish, Cora," he'd said, tilting his hat back. "They either run to something, or they run from something." The second visit, he brought back Ben's wallet, found clean and empty in the roadside ditch 5 miles up the highway. The gesture was clear. Ben hadn't been robbed. He had abandoned his currency. He had walked away from the life they'd built together, brick by slow brick. The knot under Cora's ribs hardened into a stone, a painful, heavy weight that made breathing feel like a chore. The sight of the wallet, the worn leather, the folded ID card, did not bring tears, but a terrible, absolute clarity. It was not a robbery. It was a choice, and that choice had carved a hole right through the center of her life, a hole where all the flowers and all the hopes were supposed to be. The house became a prison of good intentions. Neighbors brought casseroles and tight, knowing glances. Cora couldn't stomach the food or the pity. She saw their eyes drift to the spare room, to the place where the dress hung, judging her foolish hope. Harmony Creek always kept its secrets, but it loved to share its judgments, and every sigh, every lowered voice, told the same story. Cora Mae was left. She spent Friday and Saturday in a blur, watching the front gate, even though the sheriff had stopped coming. She watched the clock tick down to the moment her wedding should have been, the sun setting on what should have been her first night as a wife. The quiet was the worst. It didn't just fill the house. It pressed against her eardrums, humming with Ben's absence. That Sunday morning, she walked into the spare room, not to mourn, but to assess the damage. The dress was still there, immaculate, glowing faintly in the morning sun. It wasn't just fabric. It was a lie. a monument to a love that had proven to be nothing but air and dust. She couldn't sell it, couldn't burn it, and she certainly couldn't look at it anymore. A new, wild idea took root. A desperate need to make the lie physically disappear, to bury the dream deep in the same earth that had held her family for generations. The decision felt less like a choice and more like a fever dream compulsion, a necessary act of surgery on her own heart. She went to the old shed behind the garden, the one her grandfather had built for tools and secrets. She chose the long-handled shovel, its metal edge worn smooth by generations of digging in the creekside soil. Then, she approached the white muslin dress. She didn't fold it neatly or treat it kindly. She wadded it, the delicate lace catching on the buttons, the train crumpling into a heavy white cloud. She wrapped it tight in a piece of oilskin Ben had left behind. A final, cruel irony. The oilskin was meant to protect lumber from the damp, not to shroud a broken future. Out back, beneath the oldest cypress tree, the one that always looked like it was weeping, she chose the spot. The earth was soft there, a dark, loamy black that gave easily under the shovel's sharp edge. Cora didn't stop to think about what the neighbors would say if they saw her. A woman digging a hole in her best Sunday slacks. She just dug, the rhythm of the work a dull, painful counterpoint to the racing chaos in her mind. It was hard labor, a different kind of heartbreak, and with every shovelful of soil she lifted, a layer of her former self seemed to crumble away. The grave she dug was wide and shallow, just deep enough to swallow the bundle of oilskin and lace. When she dropped the dress into the hole, it hit the bottom with a soft thud, not the sound of finality, but of heavy, disappointed silence. Cora knelt, staring at the sight of her hope swallowed by the dirt. It looked absurd, wrong, a treasure cast away. She thought of Ben, and for the first time, a sharp, clear rage pierced through the numbness. She didn't weep for the man who was gone, but for the life that was stolen. The burying itself was quick. Shovel, dirt, scrape, repeat. She covered the oilskin entirely, smoothing the earth back down, stamping it firm with her heel, erasing the evidence of her insane, necessary ritual. She didn't want a mound or a marker or anything to remember the shame. She wanted the earth to reclaim the thing, to dissolve the perfect, deceitful beauty of the wedding dress. When she was done, the ground looked just like any other patch of yard, save for the scattering of cypress needles and the faint smell of freshly turned soil. But she knew. The dirt knew the secret, child. Just listen close. And the knowledge of that hidden white lie beneath the cypress made her feel utterly, terribly, and finally alone. The week after the intended wedding day passed with the slow, agonizing drag of a pulled tooth. Cora moved through her house like a ghost haunting her own life, unable to sit still, yet unable to start over. The silence, now that the wedding excitement had evaporated, was a tangible thing, thick enough to cut with a knife. Her old friend June finally showed up, not with a casserole, but with a bottle of sharp, expensive bourbon and a cynical smile. June had left Harmony Creek years ago, seeking the bright lights of the city, and she carried the air of an outsider who knew too much. "Well, Cora Mae," June drawled, pouring 2 fingers of the amber liquid into a tumbler. "Seems old Ben decided to skip out on the paperwork. Can't say I'm surprised. He always looked like a man running from a shadow only he could see." June's bluntness, though painful, was a welcome relief from the town's veiled pity. Cora sipped the liquor, feeling the burn in her throat, a physical sensation that momentarily eclipsed the deep ache in her heart. She told June about the dress, the grave under the cypress. June only nodded slowly, her eyes fixed on the backyard. "Good," June said flatly. "You bury the lie, you might just save the truth. Now, what did he leave behind? A goodbye note? A stack of bills? Men like Ben don't just disappear. They leave crumbs." Crumbs. The word snagged in Cora's mind. She hadn't looked for a note because she hadn't wanted one. A note would confirm the cowardice, the betrayal. But now, fueled by June's cold, city-hard logic, she began to pick through the wreckage of Ben's belongings. The man had lived simply. A few rough-spun shirts, a pair of worn boots, the tools he used at the mill. In the back of his cedar chest, under a neatly folded navy blanket. She found it. Not a note, not a bill, but a small, heavy wooden box, meticulously carved, which she had never seen before. It was locked. Cora tried all the keys Ben possessed, his truck key, his house key, the key to the shed, but none fit. The box was sealed, a private world Ben had kept from her. This was the first concrete clue, a denial of Sheriff Tate's easy dismissal. He hadn't just run, he had hidden something. A man who intends to abandon his life doesn't hide a locked box. He burns it or he takes it with him. This box, left behind, felt like a silent, desperate message. It shifted the whole narrative from simple desertion to a complex, unfolding mystery. The locked box became Cora's obsession. It lay on the kitchen table, small and dark, a mute challenge. She tried prying it open with a screwdriver, hammering at the delicate hinge, all acts of frustration against Ben's final secrecy. June, ever the pragmatist, suggested dynamite, then settled on a locksmith from the nearest town, 20 miles away. "Don't trust the folks here, Cora," June warned. "If Ben was hiding something, half of Harmony Creek already knows what it is and is keeping silent." They drove the distance in June's rattling sedan, the small wooden box cradled in Cora's lap. The locksmith, a kind, elderly man named Mr. Silas who didn't ask questions, worked quietly for 10 minutes. The click of the lock, when it finally gave, was a startling sound in the silent shop. Inside, there was no money, no jewelry, no sentimental letter. There was only a single aged photograph, a picture of a faded, grand house with columns and a peeling paint job, clearly not in Harmony Creek, and a small, tarnished silver key, unlike any she had ever seen. The key was marked with a single, unfamiliar letter, The photograph was the real puzzle. It was a picture of a life Ben had never spoken of. The house was enormous, sitting on high ground, looking both proud and utterly dilapidated, surrounded by ancient, Spanish moss-draped oaks. It had the look of old Southern money that had long since run dry. Cora showed the photo to June, her fingers tracing the outline of the crumbling porch. "He always told me he grew up small," Cora murmured. "A small rented room. His mother working the mill cafeteria until she died." June squinted at the image. "This isn't small, Cora Mae. This is big trouble. Old money breeds old grudges. And that house looks like it's been the keeper of 1,000 secrets." The key marked M was another mystery. It was heavy, too large for a modern lock. They went back to Harmony Creek, the bourbon finished, the silence in the car now thick with speculation. Cora decided to show the photo to Sheriff Tate, just to establish that Ben wasn't the man they all thought he was. But first, she stopped at the local library, a dusty, quiet sanctuary run by Mrs. Edna, who knew every birth, death, and deed in 3 counties. Mrs. Edna looked at the picture, her spectacles perched low on her nose, and her eyes, usually kind, narrowed slightly. "That's the Marsh house," she whispered, the name catching in her throat like a burr. "That house sits on the other side of the river, 20 miles west, in the Pine Barrens. It's been empty for 40 years, waiting for the heir to come home. Ben never told you he was a Marsh." The name Marsh hung in the air like swamp gas. Mrs. Edna explained, in hushed tones, that the Marshes were the founders of the county, once owners of all the land Harmony Creek now sat on. They had lost everything generations ago in a complex legal battle and a series of poor investments. But their claim on the old manor, the Marsh house, remained tangled in a legal nightmare. The last of the direct line, a strange, solitary man, had died decades ago, leaving the house empty and its title disputed. Mrs. Edna was certain. If Ben was a Marsh, he had kept the truth from everyone, especially Cora. The revelation was a blow, a betrayal worse than the desertion itself, because it implied a lifetime of lies. It meant the simple, honest man she was set to marry was an illusion. Cora thanked Mrs. Edna, her voice sounding oddly distant to her own ears, and walked out into the blinding afternoon sun. Ben wasn't just running away from her. He was running toward a history he had meticulously hidden. The conflict was no longer about a broken heart, but about a stolen identity. She drove immediately to the Pine Barrens, 20 miles west, the silver key warm and heavy in her palm, following the ghost of the man she thought she knew, praying the Marsh house would hold the rest of the bitter truth. The Marsh house was everything the photograph promised. Stately, imposing, and decaying. It stood sentinel on a rise, the unkempt grounds choked with kudzu and overgrown weeds. The windows were blank, dusty eyes staring out at the world that had forgotten the Marsh name. Cora parked June's sedan discreetly down the lane and walked up the crumbling drive. The silence here was different from the silence of Harmony Creek. This was a thick, ancient quiet, the kind that absorbs sound and memory. She tried the heavy front door, which was unsurprisingly locked, its brass knob tarnished green. She walked around the perimeter, the sound of her footsteps loud and intrusive on the damp ground. That's when she saw the small, detached structure near the back of the property. A brick storage house, almost a vault, sunk halfway into the earth. It was shielded by a dense thicket of holly bushes and felt somehow more secure, more deliberate than the main house. A heavy iron padlock secured the door. Cora pulled out the tarnished silver key marked M. It slipped easily into the lock, a perfect fit, turning with a rusty, grating sound that echoed loudly in the stillness. Inside the brick house, the air was musty and cold. It was not a storage shed but a small, cluttered office, clearly used recently, hidden from the main house. A cheap camp bed was set up in the corner, covered by the same type of navy blanket Ben had in his chest. A rough desk sat in the center, littered with maps, legal documents, and old newspaper clippings. Cora's heart hammered a desperate rhythm against her ribs. This was where he had been sleeping, perhaps for weeks, preparing. The man she was set to marry had been living a secret life less than an hour's drive away. On the desk, a map of the local area, centered directly over Harmony Creek, was spread out, marked with circles and notes in Ben's familiar, steady handwriting. The circles were centered on old land deeds, particularly the land along the creek where her own house stood. It wasn't about love or money or another woman. It was about land. The Marsh family's lost claim, the one Mrs. Edna had mentioned, wasn't just old history. It was Ben's current, terrifying obsession. He wasn't running from a shadow. He was hunting a buried treasure, a legal claim on the very ground Cora called home. The documents were complex, filled with confusing legal jargon about adverse possession, boundary disputes, and an ancient, forgotten easement. But the gist was horribly clear. Ben believed the Marsh family held a legitimate, though complicated, claim to a significant portion of the land that made up Harmony Creek, including the mill, the town square, and most cruelly, Cora's family home. He had been researching this for months, perhaps years, right under her nose. The final newspaper clipping, dated 2 days before the wedding, confirmed his desperation. It detailed the pending sale of the old mill property, a sale that would legally cement the current landowner's titles, effectively closing the window on the Marsh claim forever. Ben had to act now. The realization hit Cora with the force of a physical blow. The wedding, the house, the future. It was all secondary to this ancient, consuming need to reclaim a family legacy. He hadn't just betrayed her. He had used her proximity to the land, her intimate knowledge of the town's affairs, as part of his elaborate secret plan. The dream dress, white as bone, cold as river stone, now seemed like a shroud for his ambition, not his love. The room held one more secret. Tucked into the back of a legal textbook, Cora found a letter. It wasn't addressed to her, but to an unnamed legal contact in the city. In Ben's hurried, almost frantic script, he detailed his plan. He would file a temporary injunction, citing the historic Marsh claim, hoping to halt the mill sale. But the final sentence stopped her breath entirely. If I fail, or if they find out I'm using the old ledger as proof, I need you to ensure the property deed is transferred to Cora Mae immediately. They won't hurt her if she's the rightful owner. It's the only way to keep her safe from the old man. The old man. Who was he? Ben hadn't run away in simple cowardice or greed. He had run into a fight, and he was trying to protect her, to use the claim, not to take her home, but to give it to her, to secure it against this unknown enemy, this old man. The betrayal shifted, becoming tragically complex. He was not merely a liar. He was a man trapped in a generational war, a man who believed his only choice was to sacrifice their happiness for her safety. Cora went back to Harmony Creek, the key, the photo, and the crushing weight of Ben's impossible choice heavy in her purse. She decided to tell June only part of the truth, the part about the Marsh house and the land dispute, omitting the terrifying mention of the old man. June, though skeptical, recognized the danger. Land wars in the South are never just about dirt, Cora. They're about blood and names. This old man is likely someone powerful, someone who owns half the debt in this county. Cora spent the next day poring over the maps from the Marsh house, cross-referencing Ben's notes with the old deeds Mrs. Edna had shown her. She realized the mill sale was set to close the following morning. Ben's plan, whether she agreed with it or not, was about to fail, or worse, put him in grave danger if he tried to file the injunction himself. She had to act. She had to find the source of the threat before the mill deal went through, before Ben risked everything for a claim he couldn't win alone. The next morning, driven by a terrible urgency, Cora approached Sheriff Tate, not with the photo, but with a question about land history. "Sheriff," she said, her voice steady, "who is the biggest landowner in Harmony Creek? The one who bought up the old debts 15, 20 years ago?" Tate sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "That'd be Silas Finch. Owns the mill, the old depot, half the debt on Main Street. Quiet man, but nobody crosses him." "Why you a skin about Silas?" Cora felt a chill. Silas Finch. She knew him. A seemingly harmless, wealthy bachelor who lived in a sprawling, modern mansion far from the creek. The old man. Ben had warned her about Silas Finch. It became instantly clear. Finch was the one buying the mill property, cementing his dominion over Harmony Creek. And Ben, the last heir of the old broken power, was the only thing standing in his way. The conflict wasn't just land. It was an old-class war, the broken gentry against the new, ruthless money. Cora decided to use the silver key. She reasoned that Ben, knowing the gravity of his situation, would have left the key to something vital, something that proved his claim. After all, he was trying to win a legal battle. That night, she returned to the Marsh house, this time with a flashlight and a sense of cold, grim purpose. She searched the old manor, moving through the dust and shadow. She found nothing in the empty rooms until she reached the main study, a decaying room lined with dark, empty shelves. Behind one of the shelves, she noticed a small, almost invisible brass keyhole. The silver key marked M was a perfect fit. It opened a hidden compartment in the wall. Inside was not a legal document, but a heavy, leather-bound journal, the old ledger Ben had mentioned in his frantic note to the lawyer. It wasn't a ledger of finances, but a diary kept by the last true Marsh, 100 years ago, detailing the illegal land seizures and coerced deeds that had stripped the family of their holdings. It was the key to Ben's entire case, written in ink, preserved by the dry brick vault. The ledger was written in a beautiful, sprawling hand, telling a tale of greed, betrayal, and the ruthless acquisition of land through deceit and threats. It detailed how the old Marsh family had been tricked, forced to sell their holdings, including the tract where Cora's own house sat. The journal named names, specifically mentioning the Finch family's ascent to power through questionable means. Reading it felt like holding a live wire, connecting Cora directly to a century-old current of injustice. The suspense was almost unbearable. She had proof that Ben's fight was righteous, not selfish. He was not trying to take the land, he was trying to fix a historic wrong. But the journal also mentioned a crucial weakness. The old Marsh family had hidden a safety deposit box with an original deed at a bank in the next county, a kind of insurance policy against total ruin. The key to that box was mentioned only as being kept with the wedding china. Wedding china. The phrase jolted Cora back to the present, back to the parlor overflowing with untouched, winking gifts. She raced back to Harmony Creek, the ancient ledger clutched to her chest. She tore into the boxes, the silver and linen scattered across the floor, until she found the wedding china, a set of delicate blue and white porcelain. Hidden beneath the stack of saucers, nestled in the protective tissue, was a small, plain brass key. The the key to the safety deposit box. Ben had left the key right under her nose, in the one place no one would look, the symbol of their future. He had planned to use the marriage, the merging of their lives, as a shield and a delivery system for his final piece of evidence. The depth of his deception was breathtaking, yet intertwined with an equally breathtaking layer of protection for her. He hadn't just abandoned the wedding. He had turned it into a desperate, clandestine mission. Cora told June everything: the ledger, Silas Finch, the safety deposit box key. June, for once, was speechless, her usual cynicism replaced by wide-eyed caution. "This ain't a love story anymore, Cora Mae," June whispered, her voice low and grave. "This is a debt. You open that box, you sign yourself up for this war." Cora looked out at the cypress tree, the patch of disturbed earth where the dress lay. "The dress is buried, June. The dream is dead. But I can't bury the truth. Ben risked his life to put the key in my hands. I have to see what he saw." The following morning, before the town was truly awake, they drove to the neighboring county, the brass key burning a hole in Cora's purse. The bank was old, quiet, and discreet. The box was waiting, registered to B. Marsh. The contents were simple: the original, heavy parchment deed to the Marsh property, clearly predating the false sales, and a small stack of letters written by Ben. The letters were addressed to Cora, marked to be opened only if I cannot return. In them, Ben laid out the full, heartbreaking story. He explained his shame, that he was not just Ben, the mill worker, but the last Marsh, a name synonymous with ruin and ridicule. He explained Silas Finch's involvement, how Finch's grandfather had orchestrated the final land theft, and how Finch had been tracking Ben for years, waiting for him to try and reclaim the legacy. Ben had left because Finch had given him a terrible choice: abandon the claim and the town, or Cora would be dragged into the ensuing legal and possibly violent fight. Ben chose to run into the fight alone, knowing that if he failed, the deed would protect Cora's own home from any future Finch encroachment. He confessed his lie about his past was rooted in fear, not malice, a desperate attempt to create a simple life that the Marsh name would never allow. The words were simple, honest, and painfully earnest, dissolving the last of Cora's hard-won anger. The realization brought a fresh wave of grief, sharper than the initial desertion. She hadn't been abandoned by a coward, but by a man who loved her enough to choose danger over her compromise. The letters ended with a plea: "Forget the deed, Cora. Forget the land. If you're reading this, go dig up that white lie, burn it, and go somewhere new. Don't stay for my ghost. Just live." But Cora couldn't forget. She drove back to Harmony Creek, the original deed now her most treasured, terrifying possession. The path forward was clear. She had to confront Silas Finch. She needed to know where Ben was, and she needed to use the deed to finally end the century-old war that had swallowed her fiancé. June tried to dissuade her, citing the dangers of crossing a powerful man in a small town, but Cora's mind was set. She was no longer the woman burying her dreams. She was the woman uncovering them, one bitter layer at a time. The softness of the old dream was replaced by the steel of conviction.